Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and this video a like up. Mad Men has a surprising amount of Star Trek actors and even an outright reference to Gene Roddenberry's classic series. Mad Men is now streaming in 4K on HBO Max, giving audiences a new way to experience Matthew Weiner's Emmy-winning AMC series. Mad Men was produced from 2007 to 2015, during the dark period when there were no Star Trek TV series being made. Star Trek Enterprise's cancellation in 2005 marked the end of Star Trek television for 12 years until Star Trek Discovery reignited the franchise on streaming in 2017. Star Trek is one of the biggest sci-fi and pop culture franchises, and the 1960s Star Trek is referred to as Star Trek, the original series. Mad Men boasts guest stars from Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, Enterprise, Star Trek, Picard, and J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot movies. Mark Moses portrayed Herman Duck Phillips on Mad Men. Duck joined Sterling Cooper as the new head of accounts, but the recovering alcoholic flamed out after butting heads with Don Draper. Still, Duck was a recurring presence on Mad Men. Mark Moses is also known as Henry Archer, the father of Captain Jonathan Archer on Star Trek Enterprise. Moses only appeared in Enterprise's series premiere, which he filmed in 2001, 6 years before Mark came aboard Mad Men as Duck Phillips. Deborah Lacey played Carla from Mad Men Season 1 to Season 4. Carla was the Drapers' maid and nanny who cared for Don and Betty's young children. Carla weathered Betty's wild mood swings and childish behavior before she was unceremoniously fired by Mrs. Draper. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 7, Deborah Lacey played Sarah Sisko, or, more specifically, the prophet of Bajor who took over the body of Sarah Sisko so that she could become the mother of Captain Benjamin Sisko, Avery Brooks, who was destined to become the emissary of the prophets. Denise Crosby had a minor role in Mad Men Season 2 as Gertie, the riding instructor at the horse stables frequented by Betty Draper. Crosby played Lieutenant Tasha Yar in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1. Denise reprised Tasha in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 3, and she later took a villainous turn by playing Tasha's half-Romulan daughter, Sella. Peyton List joined Mad Men Season 2 as Jane Siegel, Don Draper's 20-year-old secretary. Jane was lusted after by the men at Sterling Cooper, including Roger Sterling, John Slattery, who married Jane. Roger and Jane's marriage was miserable, and they eventually divorced. In Star Trek Picard Season 1, Peyton List played Nerissa, a Romulan operative and member of the synthetics-hating sect called the Zot Vash. Before her death, Nerissa infiltrated Starfleet and posed as the human Lieutenant Rizzo. Patrick Fischler played Jimmy Barrett in Mad Men Season 2. Barrett was a famous insult comic and spokesman for its potato chips. Jimmy hated Don Draper, who carried on an affair with his wife, Bobby Barrett, Melina McGraw. In Star Trek Enterprise Season 4's episode, Terra Prime, Patrick Fischler played Mercer, a physician and a member of Terra Prime, the xenophobic terrorist cadre run by John Frederick Paxton, Peter Weller. Paxton had Mercer killed after he stole DNA to clone the baby of Subcommander T'Pol, Jolene Blalock, and Commander Trip Tucker, Connor Trinier. In Mad Men Season 2, Vaughn Armstrong played Shel Kennelly, the CEO of American Airlines. Duck Phillips wooed American Airlines to become a client of Sterling Cooper. Unfortunately for Duck, Shel was soon fired, which killed Sterling Cooper's bid for AA and doomed Duck as head of account services. In Star Trek Enterprise, Vaughn Armstrong played Starfleet Admiral Maxwell Forrest, Captain Archer's commanding officer. Forrest appeared in every season of Enterprise, but the Admiral was killed by a terrorist attack on Vulcan in Star Trek Enterprise Season 4. In Mad Men Season 3, Aaron Stanford played Horace Ho-Ho Cook, Jr. Ho-Ho was a wealthy college friend of Pete Campbell, Vincent Kartheiser, who was exploited by Sterling Cooper when he hired them to make Jay a lie America's next big pastime. Aaron Stanford played Sneed in Star Trek Picard Season 3. Sneed was a Ferengi criminal and power broker who was killed in a confrontation with Captain Worf, Michael Dorn, and Commander Raffi Musiker, Michelle Hurd, Matalas Prime. In Mad Men Season 4, John Ailes appears as Perry Demuth, the husband of Don Draper's former lover, Midge Daniels, Rosemarie DeWitt. Perry and Midge are heroin addicts. Don gave Perry $10 to buy ingredients for dinner, but Midge knew he'd just buy smack and put it in his arm. John Ailes played Dr. Bruce Maddox in the Jonathan Frakes directed Star Trek Picard Season 1 episode, Stardust City Rag. Maddox was rescued by Admiral Jean-Luc Picard's Patrick Stewart motley crew, but he was murdered by his former lover, Dr. Agnes Girardi, Alison Pill. Paul Kinsey, Michael Gladys, was a Sterling Cooper copywriter who was left behind when Don Draper, Roger Sterling, Bert Cooper, Robert Morse, and Lane Price, Jared Harris, left and formed their own agency, Sterling Cooper Draper Price. Mad Men Season 5 revealed that Paul Kinsey became a Hare Krishna, but wrote a spec script for Star Trek called The Negron Complex. Paul gave his script to Harry Crane, Rich Sommer, who lied to Kinsey about reading it. Instead, Harry gave his old colleague $500 to leave the Hare Krishnas and move to LA to become a writer. Paul Kinsey wrote his Star Trek script in the hopes of getting it produced. Mad Men Season 5 took place from Memorial Day 1966 to spring 1967, so Paul was hoping that his script would find its way to Mr. Roddenberry and be produced for Star Trek Season 2. Bruce Greenwood pops up in Mad Men Season 7 as Richard Berghoff, a retired businessman who becomes romantically involved with Joan Harris, Christina Hendricks. Ultimately, Richard and Joan's life goals didn't align, and Harris chose her career, ending their relationship. In J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009, Bruce Greenwood plays Captain Christopher Pike. Greenwood returned in Star Trek Into Darkness as Admiral Pike, who was killed by Khan Noonien Singh, Benedict Cumberbatch. Bruce Greenwood arrived in Mad Men's final season 2 years after Star Trek Into Darkness. At first glance, Star Trek and Mad Men feel like they exist in two different galaxies, one hurtling toward a utopian future filled with starships, tricorders, and warp engines, and the other firmly rooted in the smoky, bourbon-soaked offices of 1960s advertising. One makes you dream about what humanity could become. The other makes you confront what humanity actually was. But when you start digging through the thematic subspace between them, it becomes clear. There is far more Star Trek and Mad Men than anyone ever expected. It's not about cameos, crossovers, or Easter eggs. It's about the invisible warp trail running beneath the drama of Sterling Cooper, where the characters unknowingly audition for the Federation, or in some cases, the Klingon Empire. And once you see the parallels, you can't unsee them. Don Draper is a man of contradictions, just like Captain James T. Kirk. Both are charismatic leaders, both navigate crises with improvisational genius, and both hide darker truths beneath their clean-cut hero facades. Kirk's past is defined by Starfleet discipline and personal loss. Doe's is defined by reinvention and stolen identity, but their command styles rhyme. Instinct-driven, bold, persuasive, and deeply committed to the belief that they alone can solve the problem in front of them. Kirk persuades godlike aliens and android civilizations. Don persuades cigarette companies and insecure clients. Kirk charms women across the galaxy. Don charms nearly every woman he encounters. It isn't just charisma, it's that both men negotiate their worlds by projecting an idealized version of themselves. But here's the twist. Don Draper is what Kirk might have become without Starfleet's hopeful, ethical framework. Don has the brilliance, looks, and confidence of a Starfleet captain, but no Federation to hold him accountable. Without that, he spirals. Kirk inspires worlds. Don destroys marriages. Kirk becomes a legend. Don becomes a ghost of himself. To Peggy Olson. The real future of humanity. If any character in Mad Men could walk onto the bridge of the Enterprise without missing a beat, it's Peggy Olson. She embodies the same upward arc Star Trek envisioned for humanity. Growth, equality, progress, and the courage to boldly go where women weren't invited. Peggy begins the series like Earth in the Star Trek pre-Federation era. Underestimated, dismissed, told to stay where she belongs. she evolves. She confronts the biases of her time the way Earth confronted its post-atomic chaos and ancient prejudices. She becomes a creative powerhouse, an explorer of new ideas, new strategies, new versions of herself. By the end of Mad Men, Peggy doesn't just walk down the hallway with confidence and a cigarette. She looks like she's ready to step into a Starfleet uniform. In many ways, she represents Gene Roddenberry's vision better than any character in the entire show. 3. The workplace as the final frontier. Star Trek uses the bridge of a starship to explore moral dilemmas. Mad Men uses the boardroom. Strip away the phasers and the warp core, and what you have in both shows is a group of highly skilled specialists thrown into crisis after crisis, philosophical, ethical, strategic, while navigating personal drama. Sterling Cooper is, in its own flawed way, a proto-Starfleet. Roger Sterling, the sarcastic commander, more bones than Kirk, throwing quips instead of medical advice. Joan Holloway, the ship's real first officer, the emotional and organizational backbone, akin to Number 1 or early Uhura. Pete Campbell, the ambitious officer who tries too hard, a blend of early Riker insecurity and Mirror Universe Spock intensity. Every episode of Mad Men could be rewritten as a bottle episode of Star Trek. A client crisis becomes a malfunctioning warp core. A scandal becomes a diplomatic incident. A new campaign pitch becomes a first contact scenario. Beneath the mid-century aesthetics, it's the same engine. A team navigating moral complexity while reshaping the future. For technology, optimism, and the 1960s zeitgeist. The 1960s was a split reality. Technological optimism on one side, cynical social struggle on the other. Mad Men depicts the darkness, corporate manipulation, sexism, racism, and existential drift, while Star Trek offered a bright mirror universe where humanity overcomes these problems. But here's the trick. Both shows are responses to the same anxieties. One dramatizes the problem. The other imagines the solution. In Mad Men, computers replace workers. Televisions reshape identity. The moon landing is awe-inspiring yet destabilizing. In Star Trek, computers become companions, not threats. Technology frees rather than enslaves. Space exploration unites humanity. Don Draper stares at a slide projector to understand nostalgia. Spock stares into a scanner to understand emotion. Two perspectives of the same cultural shift. 5. Reinvention and identity. A shared DNA. A major Star Trek theme is the fluidity of identity. Androids seeking humanity. Vulcans balancing logic and emotion. Humans confronting alternate versions of themselves. Mad Men is obsessed with the same thing. Don Draper is practically a Star Trek identity episode. He's the mirror universe version of his better self, a man split between logic, the pitch, and emotion. The trauma, a walking Kobayashi Maru who keeps trying to cheat death and failure. Even the show's structure mirrors Star Trek. Episodic conflicts, serialized character arcs, and the constant quest for who we are and who we want to become. 6. Cultural impact. Both shows changed television. Mad Men reshaped prestige drama. Star Trek reshaped science fiction. Both built fandoms that didn't just watch the shows, they studied them. Both used allegory. Both challenged norms. Both pushed television into new creative territory. Without Star Trek, genre storytelling might never have evolved. Without Mad Men, modern character-driven dramas might never have become what they are. Together, they form a strange but perfect duality. The dream and the reality of the 1960s feeding each other across decades. 7. The ending. 2 series. 1 revelation. By their finales, both shows offer a similar message. Humanity can become better, but only if we confront who we are. Dawn meditates on a cliff and finds a sliver of peace. Kirk faces yet another crisis and chooses hope. Peggy moves forward with ambition and empathy, a perfect Starfleet hybrid. Spock embraces emotion and logic, like a more evolved Don Draper. Both series end with transformation, but with the understanding that the journey towards a brighter future is continuous. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay with us.